Jordi, I let you the floor. And so you have 30 minutes.
Thank you, Pierre-Louis. And thank you for the invitation. My main research topic is to investigate complex sensory concepts that are not very well defined. And it is true that minerality has been one of the biggest challenges in terms of sensory definition in my career. And the first point is, why to study minerality? What's the point? So 2 reasons. First, that when I started studying minerality, I realized very quickly that the use of the term was increasing every year in wine guides and in wine marketing in general. And also that is really widely used everywhere. This master of wine counted how many citations of mineral in Wine Spectator. He found more citations for mineral than for fruitiness, which is, come on, it's crazy. I mean, it makes no sense. And you can see that it's not well-defined concept. You can see it in the titles of those press articles and blogs. And Jamie Good said that minerality has been applied to wine only since the late 80s, so it's some sort of neologism. And there is no trace of minerality in the famous wine aroma wheel. And he said it's absent from the very famous book, Le Goût du Vin, which is not exactly true, because in the last edition of Le Goût du Vin, there is some preliminary thoughts about minerality based on the work that has been done in Dijon. And there is also a new entry on minerality in the Oxford Companion to Wine, which is nice. That's based on the work done in collaboration with Wendy Parr. So things are progressing. It is used by everyone. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's always good, which is amazing. And in 2020, it was a very big seminar in London about this topic, which means that it's still a hot topic, and there is still a lot of inquiries and doubts about this concept. So the idea of the study we published recently in OENO One is to explore Chablis producers' mental representation of minerality, but with an approach through the viticultural and enological practices. So it's a qualitative study, and we use a semi-structured questionnaire. And the main questions were, so first one, according to your experience, which plots in the Chablis area yield the most mineral wines? The second question was, do you think that minerality can be modulated through winemaking? And the most important question was, if you were to develop a very mineral wine, and you had the choice of the raw material, I mean the grapes, and the winemaking process, how would you do it? So the idea is knowing what they do, to access what they think, and then to contrast what they think with empirical scientific data we have published recently, and not only us, but a few other researchers in the world. So the first question was answered in a very simple way. A few respondents agreed on that the best plots to get mineral wines were Montée-de-Tonnerre, Côte des Léchets, and Montmain. And there were a disagreement concerning the most mineral side of the river. I have to tell you that Chablis area is crossed by a river called the Sérin, and typically people, the locals, talk about the left side and the right side. So people who said that the left side was more mineral than the right side, they say that it was because of the lower sun exposure. And the other people claiming that the right side was more mineral than the left side, they justified their answer because of the richer content on limestone of the right side. So our empirical data confirm that it is rather the left side that is more mineral than the right side, and we validate the idea of the Côte de l'Éché is a plot with high minerality potential, let's say. Another important topic is this famous soil mineral theory. I know you heard about this soil mineral theory. The idea is that perceived minerality comes directly from the minerals of the soil. So supposedly, the minerals in the soil go to the vine, then to the grapes, then survive one fermentation or two fermentations, and they end on the glass, and then they are perceived by the tasters. So you see the rocks, you taste the rocks, must be the same rocks. That's the theory. Or the Chablis version is, you see the oyster fossils, you smell the oyster, so it should be because of the oysters. Yeah, you laugh. I think you're right. But this is reinforced by wine guides. Huh? This is really encouraged by the discourse on the wine guides. You have very sunny wine with all the minerality from the soil that rises in this wine. It's very sexy, I agree. It's very, it works well, but it's difficult to understand in terms of mechanisms. And with this respect, my friend Alex Malmont, who is a geologist, claimed that you cannot taste soil minerals in wine. And he brings three reasons. The first one is the low cation exchange capacity of minerals from the rocks to the solution, to the nutrient solution. The second one is that the cations passing into the wine roots depends on vine physiology, not just because the cations are there. And the third reason is that in the finished wine, cations are usually under the perception threshold. So it's not very likely that the soil mineral theory works. So what do we have in terms of correlation between cations and minerality? We measure quite a lot cations in 2 studies, but from everything, we only got 2 significant relationships. One, high copper content were related to low minerality levels in Chablis wines, and the other is the high sodium concentrations are related to high minerality in Sauvignon Blanc wines, like you can see in this PLS model, in which all the cations are not significant, but sodium in here. So 1 out of many. And honestly, I don't think that sodium and copper are the main cations representing the terroir. I'm not the expert. You are the experts. Another very important topic was ripeness and harvest date. And some verbatims are like this one. So for the third question, what would you use? So they say, I will use grapes from cooler hills with slow ripening process, not very exposed to the sun, never over ripeness. That's the subject 9, say exactly that. So the point is that the harvest date must not be too early to avoid greenness, but not too late to avoid over-ripeness, which rings the bell concerning Stephanie's presentation this morning. So the point here is to keep the acidity and the freshness and avoid too much richness in the wine. So our empirical data, not our, but Heyman's empirical data on minerality show that this relationship between sourness, freshness, and minerality is validated by a rigorous sensory analysis made at Davis in 14. The second topic concerns the alcoholic fermentation, and especially two aspects of the alcoholic fermentation: the kind of yeast used and the fermentation temperature. So what they say is, I would favor indigenous yeast, precisely perhaps to maximize the terroir effect, the mineral effect. When we write a verbatim, we respect even the hesitations of the respondent. Right? That's very important to capture the doubt. So look how mineral and terroir are a little bit interchangeable in this sentence. That's quite interesting. Anyway, they claim that indigenous yeasts are better for minerality. Some of them using commercial yeast, they claim that if you use commercial yeast, it has to be neutral yeast, not aromatic yeast. And they also say that warmer alcoholic fermentations, around 23, 25, make wines more mineral, and they say they express better the terroir. Again, this confusion between minerality and terroir, which is quite interesting. So the point here is that too much fruit, because of the yeast or because of the low temperatures, can mask minerality. And we have some empirical data that shows that the most mineral wines have low fruit, and the less mineral wines have much more fruit. That's from 2013. And a little bit later, we got also a little bit the same phenomenon. The more mineral wines were very low in fruit. All the respondents agree on that oakiness hides minerality. They prefer not using oak to have higher minerality, and they use rather stainless steel tanks. For those who use barrels, they don't use a new oak. So really a nice agreement on this idea. And Hildegard experiment shows very well this opposition between mineral wines and oaky wines for an expert panel, but also for a trained panel in here. The barrel, the caramel, and here the minerality with the sourness, chalkiness, etc. So this was a very consensual idea. A very interesting idea is also that lees and reduction are linked to minerality. So I like this verbatim a lot. Chablis wines are characteristic of minerality when they are in a slight reductive state. And they added, by reduction, I don't mean H2S. I mean not rotten egg, of course. But just a slight reductions, not annoying, but reinforcing the taste of terroir. Again, confusion between minerality and terroir. So the point here is that slight reduction supports minerality with others like silex, gunflint, oyster, these kind of things. And do we have some empirical data showing that reduction, like wet dog, wet mop, for the more mineral wines. And also in here, you got the gunflint in here associated with the most mineral wines. So yeah, reduction is playing a role in minerality. And that brings us to the sulfur connection. We all know the work of Tominaga on sulfur compounds. Tominaga Tominaga and co-workers, obviously, spiked wines with BMT, and the most mentioned descriptor was gunflint, which is one of the main dimensions of minerality when it comes to odor. And Starkeman, Christian Starkeman, in collaboration with Pascal Denelin from Saint-Jean, they found that the most mineral chasselas had higher concentrations on those sulfur compounds than the less mineral chasselas. So the sulfur connection is pretty much validated. And to go further, I have to add that when you find minerality, SO2 is not very far. You can see it in this study with Sauvignon Blanc. We did with Wendy Parr from New Zealand. And minerality for French is very correlated with free SO2, and minerality for New Zealanders is very correlated with bound SO2. But SO2 is always around. And Hildegard found also in 14 a nice correlation between minerality, you see here minerality, then total SO2, and free SO2. So SO2 is always around. And I would like to point out another chemical correlation. The respondents didn't mention that, but we can see it from the chemical data. It concerns malolactic fermentation. This is an hypothesis, but we can see that lactic acid is anti-correlated to minerality, and malic acid is correlated to minerality. So perhaps malolactic fermentation is a point on the winemaking that masks minerality. And the same can be seen in Heyman and co-workers. You see this clouding here with cream with lactate, which means basically for the lactic acid, as opposed to minerality here, malate. So yeah, I think there is something going on with malolactic fermentation that could be like anti-correlated with minerality. So to conclude, I would say that sulfur compounds and organic acids are more likely to explain minerality than actual minerals. I'm not sure that sulfurality will do from a marketing point of view. Donc, we should keep minerality nonetheless. I think minerality could be considered not as a single descriptor, but as a configuration of attributes, like a wine style. So a wine style that could be something like, I'm just making this up, right? Pale gold, slight reduction, like a hint of gunflint oyster, some citrus freshness undertones, no oak, no butter, nice acidity, crisp acidity, and no excess of body or alcohol. So that's my recipe, if you want, for now, for mineral wines, according to the respondents that participated in my study in Chablis. So thank you for your attention. If you have questions.